The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at wrestlingwithjohners.com.
There's a new bar in town. Welcome to the Turnbuckle Arms, where the banter flows like wine and the topics are as fresh as an ice-cold pint. So pull up a chair, grab yourself a glass, and welcome your hosts, The Brood!
Hello and welcome to this swift half episode of the Turnbuckle Arms podcast. I'm your host Lexi Helms. I have with me today the wonderful, fantastic, one and only Mr. Griz. And today we're going to be talking about that Undertaker interview, specifically certain quotes of it. So, I'm going to let you start.
Yes. Well, Undertaker recently done an interview on the Joe Rogan Experience, found exclusively on Spotify. Not that he needs a fucking plug, Jesus.
Don't know about it.
I'm actually going to listen to this at work, probably tomorrow if I have the time. The full thing, because there's about 3-ish hours, as all of Joe Rogan's podcasts tend to be. Be a good.
Thought we were long listeners, viewers.
Well, if you ever listen to my other podcast, Jesus, that's short.
Anyway.
So, The Undertaker said, I try. It's tough right now for me. The product has changed so much, and it's kind of off. I'll probably piss a lot of people off, but they need to hear it. It is what it is. To the young guys who think that he's a better guy, I'm not better. I did my time. I walked away when I wanted to walk away. I just think the product is a little soft. There's guys here and there that have an edge to them, but there's too much pretty and not enough substance, I think, right now. So that is the quote from The Undertaker on the Joe Rogan podcast, which is pretty much the kind of the seed of conversation that will bloom into the amazing flower over the next however long we're allowed to.
30-ish minutes.
I was never one for time restraints.
It depends how quickly I get through this. Anyway, as you were. So, my initial reaction to that was, that's potentially a bit disrespectful to those that are grafting and working their arse off, and they can't help what creative do in terms of where they want to go. I mean, last year they had Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman as creative on Raw and SmackDown respectively, and then that
Bischoff didn't last very long at all.
I was going to say that died a death very, very quickly. So if people aren't going to come in, if people are going to come in that can make the changes that have worked with the edgier product and then don't last, how are they supposed to continue? And I don't know what the word would be, like, to create a more in your face, a more
appealing product.
Yeah. Especially to people like him, because we know that The Undertaker is so well respected, like, in the locker room. And I think he's right. A couple of people in the locker room will be pissed off with that, especially when it's not in their control.
Considering The Undertaker's been through, I mean, it's been 30 years as The Undertaker, so he's seen, but as a wrestler, he's probably closer to 35 years. Yeah. So he probably wrestled in the late 80s, through the 90s, through the 2000s, through the 2010s, and into the 2020s.
Yeah.
So he's seen everything for about the past, essentially, 4 decades. And so I think this is that kind of thing where, as you kind of say, like, it's a bit disrespectful in a way, but it's like, if there's anybody that has a right to sort of say that wrestling's really changed, it's it's The Undertaker.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way of looking at it, but is him saying it going to get the powers that be to sit up and go, oh, hang on a minute, we're being called out? That's,
Not him personally, no. Which is very annoying, because someone that's been, loyal to you for 30 years, saying that, and you're just going to completely ignore him after everything he's done for you. But there was this other article that I kind of read, like, somewhat recently, where when Raw had one of its literal lowest ratings ever, which was sometime last year, they said, like, right, you need to try and make this product a bit more edgy and get people back, because this is bad. Which is why I think this kind of recent angle with Randy Orton and Alexa Bliss shooting a fireball at his face has kind of stemmed from that, and the whole main event of TLC where Orton lit the Fiend on fire.
Allegedly. For me, if you want to improve the product, I'm going to be absolutely honest with you, cut Raw down to 2 hours. 2 hours of Raw, 2 hours of SmackDown, and I would put NXT back at an hour. So then you would have 5 hours of mainstream WWE content, which would leave the fans wanting more, because I genuinely think, and I don't know if it's something that he's considered or not, he being The Undertaker, we are oversaturated now with content. We have, if you watch the American promotions alone, we have 3 hours of Raw, 2 hours of SmackDown, 2 hours of NXT, 2 hours of AEW, and I think Impact is still 2 hours.
2 hours.
It's been a while. So
and that's not including AEW Dark, which averages 2.5, sometimes 3 hours.
So you're looking per week at
and 205 Live. You watch that, which I do, but I'm like
the only person. If you just take those and don't add 205 Live on it, you've already got about 13.5 hours. If you then want to add in things like 205 Live, NXT UK, that's another 2 hours. Yeah, so you go to 15.5 hours of wrestling content, and that's without taking in things like Ring of Honor or New Japan or
MLW, NWA. Try and think who even else.
You could quite easily get to 24 hours worth of wrestling content per week. Like, if you think back to when The Undertaker, or to what's seen as sort of the boom period of wrestling, the Attitude Era, you had Nitro for 2 hours, that then went to 3, and then you
then went back to 2.
There you go. And then you had Raw, which was 2 hours. So you had literally 2 hours worth of mainstream American wrestling that you could watch. And that was it. So it left fans hungry for more. It left fans going, okay, well, where's this going to go? I can't wait. It becomes must-see TV. And I think for me, that's something that he hasn't thought of, because it's very, very easy to say, oh, it needs improving. But you need to make your content watchable and not get bored. Because I'll be honest with you, I haven't watched a full episode of Raw for years. Because I look at it and I go, 3 hours, that's a fucking pay-per-view. Got better things to do with my time. I'll just read online.
Fair enough.
And
then, like, most of the time you watch Raw and it's panned because it's... I mean, as much as every wrestler tries, it's sometimes it's not great.
Well, this is the thing. My thing about reducing the hours is not a kicking off or having a go at any of the talent. I just think that you get tired, you get wrestling fatigue. So there's only so many times that you can see similar sort of things play out in front of you before you think, oh, okay, I'm bored now. What's next? What's the next thing that happens? What's going on? And sometimes the storylines are cringeworthy, The one that I'll use that springs to mind is Rey Mysterio, An Eye for an Eye. that was cringe. That,
Yeah.
even though it was more adult, grown up, whatever in its content, I just sat there and I was like, what the fuck is the point in this? An eye for an eye. We all know that it's not going to be right. And I didn't gel with it. I didn't connect with it. Whereas if it was something like, let's go really old school now. Let's say that, his leg was broken or an arm was broken. I'd be more inclined to believe that than I would him losing his eye. So, I don't know. Like, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I agree that eye for an eye was really stupid in context, and then especially the whole his eyes hanging out of his face is like
Don't buy that song.
Yeah, but one sort of company. Well, I mean, okay, it was kind of more of a TV show that happened to have wrestling. I'm talking about Lucha Underground here.
Mm-hmm.
They done like a really good story for a long time with Pentagon, where he would do. I mean, it's a movie still does now, but obviously, like they made it mean so much more when it was in Lucha Underground, where he would break the arms of like practically any wrestler that he faced. So he would do that kind of thing where he locks your one arm, grabs the other arm, and just pulls back.
Yeah.
And then they would sell like their arm is broken, and so they would be gone for weeks.
Yeah.
And it's just something so simple like that. It's like probably that move didn't really even hurt that much, but
yeah,
just it's the selling and just the commentary all just kind of working together to be like, oh my god, his arm's broken, and then just continued to kind of work with that to make Pentagon to just be an absolute murderer of a person in Lucha Underground.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I don't understand why Paul Heyman lasted not as long as he should have in his creative role, because he knows how to not only work the crowd, he knows how to generate heat, and he knows what leaves the audience wanting more. We've spoken about it before, the angle with the Sandman, where the Sandman got blind and was blinded. Something was thrown in his eyes. I can't remember who threw it. Was it Taz or something? They did something to him. They essentially blinded
Wasn't it a fireball?
him. Yeah, I think so. They blinded him.
Funnily enough.
Ironically. And basically Paul Heyman was like, look, you can take this as far as you want to go. And he would get his wife to answer the door. He wouldn't be seen out in public, and if he was, his wife was with him, and he had all the dressings on.
Wear glasses and cover his head up and all that, and pretend he was actually blind.
Yeah. So that was, I mean, that's a level of dedication that, I'll be honest with you, realistically, is it something that can be done in this day and age? I don't know.
Could it? Yes. Could it? Yes, because it's kind of one of these things, especially in a pandemic, that something like this could be done very well, where, like, maybe any other time, probably not. But, like, right now, like, say if, Randy Orton's doing something with that. Like, he's wearing this really weird, creepy, fucking flesh-colored mask right now, when he got shot in the face by Alexa Bliss recently, and he cut a promo, and like his nose and all that is like pure like red and gross looking, and he's wearing the rest of the mask. But see if he tried to imply that he was blind, like you could do stuff like have Randy Orton come on Instagram and like have his wife be like, Alexa Bliss, look what you done. Look what you done to my husband, and then just like, show Orton, and then like just, I mean, he could put in contacts to make him look blind or something like that. I don't know, like there's plenty of things that you could do with that, and then Orton's kind of sitting there like, he could be like, oh, who's there, who's that? I was like, it's me, Randy, it's me. It's like, oh, Jemima or whatever I don't know. It's
Mrs. Orton.
Mrs.
Or
Orton.
it's your dad or whatever.
Yeah, or like Bob Orton kind of is like, look what you did to my son, and then like all that stuff will spread,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
I mean,
then it
I
could be a kind of thing that's like a kind of a build up over time, and it's all on like Instagram or something, and
yeah.
then they can show it on TV. Like, look how look how well that Randy Orton has progressed in his kind of healing process to come back after that fireball, and
I
like it
mean,
could be a thing where it's like, sorry, sorry,
no, I was
cutting you
going to
off.
say they could build in Randy Orton news, so take it right back to one of his first gimmicks.
Hmm.
And, even though he wouldn't take it as far, he could be like, I'm dropping in with I've been to see the consultant today and they've said that I've regained 2% in my left eye or
Yeah,
whatever. Um,
I'm gaining my sight back. It's
yeah,
taking time.
but I don't. I don't think there's any sort of planning that goes into or continuity in WWE at the moment. Like,
Mhm.
it's like somebody sat down and went, right, we're going to pick these random ideas out of the hat. All right, we'll do that one week. And then the next week, do something completely opposite that completely, you know, goes against it. It just doesn't seem to be consistent or, you know, I don't know. Is do you get that, or is it just me, or
I mean, I feel like the feud with Orton and the Fiend is all surrounded around fire. Like,
mm,
so it all kind of makes sense in that kind of aspect. But the way that it very much just kind of jumped from, because on the build up to TLC, they were just going to have a match. And then, literally, about 3 days before the pay per view, they were just like, oh, this is now an Inferno match. And it's like, well, that came out of nowhere.
that's another thing. That is another thing that winds me up about WWE. They have these great ideas and they don't nurture them properly. If they'd have built that up, if they'd have had that match at TLC and it was just a normal match and they had it where it ended in one of the Fiend's weird ways and Randy Orton was blinded, came back and was like, there's only one way we're going to solve this. I started this with fire. You've taken it to the next level. I want to take it to the next level after that.
Mm-hmm.
That would make sense. But there was just nothing. It was just Randy Orton versus The Fiend, bam, Inferno match.
Yeah. Because the match was announced for weeks. It's like, oh, Randy Orton's going to take on The Fiend at TLC. And we're like, wow, well, that's going to be a nothing match that The Fiend wins. And then, like, literally after the Go Home Raw had aired, we were sitting there, like, I think we were waiting for SmackDown, and they were just like, oh, it's going to be an Inferno match now. And you're like, wait, what? I'm sorry? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah. So, taking it back to what The Undertaker said then, who's at fault then for the product being soft? Is it the talent? Is it the writing staff? Is it a combination of the writing staff, the bookers, and the network, possibly? Like,
Everybody except the wrestlers, I would argue.
yeah,
The wrestlers are told what they have to do, and they do what they do well.
yeah,
The problem is, well, one is the bookers,
yeah.
but two is kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? Like
The writers,
no,
powers that be.
well, I guess I could say the networks, but also the sponsors. That's the word I was looking for.
There you go.
Be-
Yeah,
Because obviously having all these people under that umbrella that are pumping money into WWE, they're like, oh, I don't want this, I don't want that, and it's like, well, we're trying to put on a fucking show here. Like,
the
stop
thing
giving
is
us
though,
restrictions. Like
like,
one of the worst things that WWE ever had is the loss of blading. And I know, like, it's not exactly the most healthiest thing in the world, but at the same time, there's been some absolute literal blood feuds. And then there's people that are going out there in matches and literally punching each other so hard in the face that they'll bleed for real, because then they can go, oh, well, that happened by accident. And then nobody can say, huh, Well, you didn't blade.
Yeah. I think, for me, if I was an investor and I was investing in a wrestling product,
You should understand what that product is for a
yeah,
start.
I think I would want to understand about what it is and how far it can go and say, okay, we've looked at your product, we want to invest, but our hard limits are swearing or too much blood or, you know, too many adult themes, for example. You know, this is like, this angle is okay, so affairs, they're okay, incest, not so much, or you know, pregnancy and loss of a baby is a hard limit for us. We don't want to be associated with that. And I think that would be a better way to go about it. But I worry, I really, really do worry about the future of the company. And I shouldn't, because when you look at it, look at who is picked to take over that company.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about his wife, I'm talking about Triple H. And look at what Triple H has done with NXT.
Yeah.
You know, that has a stamp, and that is why NXT is my favourite brand of WWE. As much as I love SmackDown, as much as I can watch Raw, I'm not saying that I love it because I still think it's too long. But for me, if you said to me, you have to watch one WWE program a week, choose, it'd be NXT. It would absolutely be NXT.
Exactly.
Because it feels a lot more gritty, a lot more real. You know,
plus they are going out their way to do things that the rest of WWE don't do. They do the War Games every year, and they do the Fight Pit, which has been the newest creation that has been entertaining both times that it's happened.
I've not seen that yet, I have to say. Is that like what happened between Owen Hart and Ken Shamrock?
Yes, but no.
Right.
It's essentially it's the wrestling mat with the posts, but there's a cage around it, no ropes, and then there's like a kind of walkway around the top.
Right.
There's only been two of them, and the first one was Timothy Thatcher and Matt Riddle. The second one that happened just on the last episode of NXT at the time of recording, depending on when this comes out, was Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa.
Yeah, that's got my attention, I'm not going to lie.
So it's very great. It's very UFC-esque in the kind of way of, like, they'll still do wrestling moves, but there's a lot more kind of, you know, using the cage to your advantage, and a lot of like kind of like rough and tumble submissions, and looking to use weird ways to use the cage, because like, as I said, the ring ropes aren't in the way, so
yeah,
when you're launching something at the cage, if they're going into the cage, they're not gonna like maybe rebound off the ropes and kind of slightly knock into the cage, that kind of thing.
Get you. I mean, is that something that you can see going to SmackDown and Raw, or do you just want it to stay on NXT?
I think they've carved their niche with NXT, and I think it should stay there, because it is definitely, especially with the Fight Pit. War Games you could easily do in a big arena, but obviously, as we've kind of heard before, Vince does not like the idea of the two ring thing.
And that's exactly why it needs to stay on NXT, because, you know, the fact that it is that, for me, the fact that it's a callback to the old WCW, nice little nod, nice little way to pay respects to the past, but the way that they've done it is absolutely fantastic. And of course, now if you have the network, you can be exposed to older pay-per-views and the weird and wonderful stipulations that there have been over the past God knows how long of wrestling matches. But it's a difficult one. It is a difficult one because what else could we have? Like, Halloween Havoc came back and I was so made up. I was like, yes, keep that. So what next? What else are they going to bring back? Bash at the Beach as NXT sort of own SummerSlam, or I mean,
because this is the thing though, is like everything exciting that seems to happen in wrestling these days always comes back on NXT.
Yeah, and
but then WWE falls back on all of their history, but to the point where it's really bad that instead of, you have a feud so brutal that it needs to be determined in Hell in a Cell, you'll start a feud a month in advance and go, oh, well, it's October, it's time for Hell in a Cell.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see what The Undertaker's opinion is just on NXT. Because as a whole, you can dissect that quote and you can use bits and stuff to say, well, yes, he's right, or no, he's wrong, or whatever. But putting out that very generic, I can't watch the product because it's soft, I feel is really disrespectful to NXT. And it just shows possibly the mentality that the older talent have towards NXT, which is, it's just developmental. It's just developmental.
I would really like to think that maybe when he says the product, he doesn't include NXT in that.
But the thing is, though, because it's so broad, because it's so vague, if I was doing that interview with him, I'd go, okay, well, what's your opinion on NXT? Do you think that's soft? Or, and I'll be honest with you, full disclosure, I haven't listened to the Joe Rogan interview. I plan on doing it, just when I get round to it, I'll do it.
But that's also that kind of thing that I get where, assuming Joe Rogan, obviously he is very busy doing, UFC and all that. I wouldn't think that he doesn't know that NXT exists, but more so the fact that I don't think that he would follow that.
But it goes back to what we were saying before. If you're a sponsor, you should know the product. And I don't know whether you do this, but if you have somebody appearing on a podcast, do a little bit of research around the product. It's not difficult to find out that there are 3 flagship shows for WWE. It's not difficult. And when you look at the likes of who's come up through NXT that are making waves now on the main roster, regardless of whether it's the waves that they should be making or whatever, the likes of Shinsuke Nakamura, the likes of The Fiend, the likes of Alexa Bliss, and the transformation that she's had, that's so ingrained in her history, if you like, that it would be difficult to escape the NXT aspect of it. So I can remember when Alexa Bliss had blue at the end of her hair. And I thought, that's fucking awesome. Then when I researched it, I went, nah, I'm not going to do that because it goes green. Yeah, random fact. But do you know what I mean? It's sort of like you've got this absolute icon, because he is, this absolute icon, and let's get, what's the most talked about product that WWE has? I'm going to lean and say that it's NXT that does the talking for them now.
Yeah, totally.
And that's not me having a go. That's just me saying, well, why didn't you push on that further? Because that can be interpreted, that quote, the product is soft. That can encapsulate, in fact, it does for me, it encapsulates everything. Yeah, and then you look at the matches that have been on. Ilya Dragunov versus Walter. How was that soft?
I see that in a Raise You Finn Balor versus Kyle O'Reilly, where both of them were so beat up at the end of that match that Balor broke his jaw, and while he was raising up, the NXT title at the end of that match, he was literally spewing blood out of his face.
And there was the image of them holding each other's arms up at the end, and Balor's got the title, and you can see his jaws out here somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, so
not where it's meant to be.
Exactly. I mean, for me, I would have just liked him to pick up on that and go, do you think the same of NXT? You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, how do you solve a problem of the whole product being too soft, though? That's the thing.
I guess, like, it's kind of the thing of, like, you just kind of need to kind of go back on some of the things that people say, and it's like, see, if you lose a couple of sponsors from that, you'll get new ones.
Yeah. I mean...
But also, sorry, also the fact that WWE is getting more money in now than they ever have. And this is saying this now after nearly a year of them not being able to run stuff like house shows, not being able to sell like as much merchandise as they do at said shows and all that stuff. Not being able to go over to Saudi.
Yeah.
Like that Saudi Arabia contract just on its own. I think I read this somewhere that the Saudi Arabia contract that they had a couple of years ago, which obviously they're kind of breaching right now, but for, you know, obvious reasons, that gave them so much money that they could stop doing live events almost forever and not ever take any dip in money.
See, that's the thing, because a lot of fans and a lot of talent have been quite vocal about that.
Mm-hmm.
About the Saudi shows and about how they don't want to participate, and, you know, that's their stance, and fair dues, they're taking a stance, and well done to them. But if you're going to do things like that, and you're going to piss off some of your fan base and some of your employees, why are WWE scared, and I will use that word, scared, to piss off some sponsors?
Exactly. You're willing to alienate some of your talent when you do two, sometimes three, maybe, shows a year in Saudi Arabia, a place that a lot of people are like, nope, I ain't doing that. And it's like, okay, right, you don't need to do that. But yet at the same time, they're like, let's not do blood.
And considering as well,
because a figure company said no.
Considering as well that it's not just some of the talent, essentially they alienate half of the roster doing that. Because obviously female talents, until I think it was the last one that they did, the female talents couldn't wrestle, and when they do wrestle, they lose some of the spectacle because they are covered pretty much from head to toe. And I read somewhere that Natalya got death threats for participating in the match that she did against, was it, I can't remember who it was against.
Lacey Evans, I'm pretty sure.
There you go, against Lacey Evans. So, you know, again, another example of pissing off the fans, you know. But I will say, in that whole reverting to type, my only concern is that we will go back to the Attitude Era, and we know what Vince's sense of humour is like. Mm-hmm. And some of the shit that they did in the Attitude Era, they would not fucking get away with now.
Oh, absolutely. It is a case of, you know, the 90s were a different time, and so all of that kind of stuff you kind of need to look at with its whole... You need to look at it in that mindset. Yes, a lot of it doesn't come off well now, like... Yeah. Like, you know, with the whole kind of... Oh, so I've lost my baby, stuff like that. Like...
Yeah, and the example that I use is the Nation of Domination skit that DX did.
Yes, blackface.
Yeah. Like, that shit wouldn't fucking wash now. No way. But my concern is that if they go, right, okay, let's just go full force at it over there, that the Undertaker has said that the product is soft, let's harden the product up. If they go back to that kind of mentality, behaviour, whatever, what impact will it have on the product?
I would hope it would be positive. Like, obviously, taking into account that, I mean, we are a very, very, very sensitive breed of human being these days.
Yeah.
Arguably, I mean, I will just say it quickly. Arguably, sometimes too sensitive. I'm not going to get into the rest of it, but yes, like, but like that kind of thing of like, you can still push your product to be edgy without it being offensive.
Yeah. And I think that's something that AEW has done, being honest with you. I mean, again, if I was interviewing The Undertaker, I would ask him, well, what are your thoughts on AEW? You know, because clearly, and we haven't addressed this yet, clearly there's been a lifting of the kayfabe veils as far as The Undertaker is concerned. So now that we are seeing Mark Calloway, the man behind The Undertaker, go ahead, say you watch a different product. You know, I've said before, I'm predominantly WWE because that's what I know. That's the familiar product that I watched. But if you were to ask me 20 years ago during the Monday Night Wars, I was a Nitro person. Why? Because that was the only product I could watch on a Friday night. Because when Raw was on, we didn't have the subscription for Raw. So am I going to ask my dad to pay extra money out for 2 hours? Yes, and it never got there. Or do I watch the product that I get for free? It's a no-brainer. I will watch the product for free. You know?
That's still why Impact is arguably still one of the highest rated wrestling shows in the United Kingdom, is because it's on free-ish TV. Because it's on, I think it's still on Challenge, or did it moved somewhere, but...
It was supposed to go to a new home, and then I didn't hear anything else about it. So...
But I'm sure it was still like kind of a free...
Yeah, I think
like,
it was.
So it was
well.
still on like Freeview.
But you see, the thing is, though, as well, with Impact, they would give their pay-per-views in the UK for free, or they used to back in the day. You know, but now you've got BT Sport that are showing WWE programming. You've got Channel 5 that have gone back to their roots in terms of when they first started. They were showing terribly edited versions of WCW wrestling. So like when they used to get hit with the chair, it used to come up like whack,
smash,
and wham, and stuff like that. So they have gone back and they've started showing 1 hour highlights episode, which is fine, but obviously more exposure, more eyes on the brand. And you know, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Could, if WWE went down a different direction and started becoming more adult, could they get away with broadcasting a 1 hour highlight show on Channel 5 at 11 o'clock in the morning? This is the thing.
Because if you remember, like, SmackDown used to air on Sky 1 back in the day. Like, the entire
baby.
Yep. Every Saturday, I used to be up. Like, it doesn't matter what time I stayed up till in the morning, I would always be up and watch SmackDown. And then I used to get pissed off when, like, chair shots would be stopped before Impact. I was like, well, what's happening? Why is that happening?
Yeah. And they do it as well because they used to have the bottom line on afterwards, which was the highlight show for Raw.
Yeah.
Which, you know, that was great. I mean, this is another thing that winds me up as well. Just thinking about that time when the original brand split came in. they made it feel like something special. They made it feel like you were either Team Red or you were Team Blue. Yeah? Now, I'll be absolutely honest with you. If somebody said to me, you can either watch Raw or you can watch SmackDown, I would pick SmackDown every time.
Agreed.
Irrespective of, you know, who was on it, what, you know, yes, Evolution was Raw, but no, I'd want to watch SmackDown because I'd want to see, like, there's a feud between the Big Show and Eddie Guerrero.
Yeah, who'd have thought that you would bring up a feud between Big Show and Eddie Guerrero and be like, yeah, that was better than anything that was on Raw. Like,
Because
the Big Show, though.
But it had everything.
It absolutely was.
It had everything. It had comedic elements. It had classic Eddie Guerrero tactics. It had the Big Show
covered in poop.
Yeah, it had the burrito incident, which Eddie Guerrero basically made a dodgy burrito and fed it to the Big Show, and the Big Show ended up on the toilet or whatever. But there's also moments from
It's funny
SmackDown.
'cause he's big.
It is. It's hilarious, isn't it? There's also moments from SmackDown that I think, what the actual fuck? And the example I'm going to use is Canyon coming out of the fucking crate singing to the Big Show.
Do you
singing
really
to the Undertaker.
want to rob me?
Yeah, which you can't see on the network because they've edited that out. Because I was looking for it the other week, but it was still better than what was going on Raw.
Because it was, I think it was, wasn't it because, like Canyon, known gay guy, and it's like, you're gonna sing a song by, what's his butt?
Boy George.
Yeah, Boy George.
See, I don't...
And it's like, of course you're gonna get another gay guy to sing that song.
Yeah. However, you know, given the antics and the way, like, you can find it on YouTube and it is cringeworthy when you see it. However, the way that those commentators, I think it was Taz and Michael Cole, the way that those commentators built and fed into that, which I think is another reason why it's soft, or it's described as soft by The Undertaker, is you don't have that backup. You don't have that backup of the commentators really sort of hammering that point home.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, I love Corey Graves. I think Corey Graves is great.
Mm-hmm.
I think Samoa Joe is fantastic on commentary. There is something...
That's someone in the ring.
Yeah, I do, but I'd rather see him be used somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah?
And like, absolutely, I will not disagree. Like, he's excellent on commentary.
Yeah.
But Jesus, I miss him in the ring.
Yeah. I mean, where does it go? Like, for me, the commentary needs addressing. And I don't know what it's missing. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know, you know, because when something happens, you don't seem to have that, oh my God thing. It's just like, oh, well, this has happened. Yeah. You know?
Like, JR was always the best for when big moments happened.
Yeah. But then again, Taz was good as well with his, when the Big Show and Brock Lesnar broke the ring.
Yeah.
And his holy shit. That was fantastic. I know that you don't like him, but for me, it is a sad loss to WWE that Mauro Ranallo's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Because Mauro Ranallo...
Well, like, when I address that quickly, see, when he was on SmackDown, he was incredible. Like, I completely changed the tune of what I thought about Mauro Ranallo, because when New Japan was shown on Access, I got a few episodes of that and I kind of watched it.
Yeah.
And he was kind of doing this NXT thing where he would constantly like talk about other stuff, and it's like, just talk about what's happening in the ring.
Yeah.
But then he got hired by SmackDown and he did an absolutely amazing job.
Yeah.
It was only when he went to NXT and it was clearly given more free reign than he was on SmackDown, that's what started to annoy me. So the thing is just like, it's not that I hate Mauro Ranallo as a commentator, it's just I hate the things that he did. Like with the whole, oh, well,
Mamma mia!
well, the Mamma Mia, right? Okay, it's fine to have a catchphrase, you know, JR had by God and all that stuff, like, fine, like, but, you know, it was that kind of thing that he would throw a Mamma Mia out at, like, a fucking, you know, like a snapmare or something like that. I'll go, oh, Mamma Mia, what a snapmare. It's like, that's not a Mamma Mia moment. A Mamma Mia moment would be like when Ricochet done a triple fucking moonsault off the top of the War Games. That's a Mamma Mia moment.
That is, yeah.
Like,
I mean,
and then the whole constant pop culture references. Oh, she just got kicked in the face the way that Katy Perry got proverbially kicked in the face by Taylor Swift in her new diss track or something like that. It's like
yeah.
It partially annoys me because, one, I don't understand most of these pop culture references because I hate pop culture, but I don't know anything about the beef between Katy Perry and fucking Taylor Swift, but and then he starts talking about Cardi B. I'm like, who the fuck is Cardi B?
Yeah. However,
just commentate on the match and be excited about the match.
now you see, for me, I will put this in. How much of that was directed to him by people in the back, and how much of that was authentic Mauro? Because we've had this conversation before. If you go back and you watch the original UK Championship tournament from 2017, Michael Cole is fucking brilliant. I will quote himself and say that it is vintage Michael Cole. It is the Michael Cole that we know from the Attitude Era.
Absolutely, yes.
And SmackDown. Yeah?
Yep.
But when he went back to Raw, he had that little voice in his ear.
All of a sudden, it completely changed.
Completely different, right? And for me, I just have to question if they can take someone like Michael Cole and you can see him at his absolute fucking brilliant on one evening, and then within the space of 2 weeks be fucking hell, Michael Cole, shut the fuck up.
Not even 2 weeks, like 2 days.
Yeah.
Because he done the, was it not Saturday, Sunday maybe?
Saturday, Sunday, yeah.
And then he was on Raw on Monday.
Yeah.
So as soon as that was done, he flew back, he was on Raw, and then all of a sudden, it was like after 2 days of listening to Michael Cole on commentary at the UK tournament, all of a sudden on Raw, it was just, no, this and that, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh, good, it's you again.
Like, yay, we've got the robotic Michael Cole back. So is there something like that at play here with Mauro? But that's a different topic for a different day. Bringing it back then, The Undertaker also caused more controversy, more upset, depending on how you want to word it later on in that interview. He basically said that... Go on.
I was saying enlighten us.
Ah, I see. Apologies. Basically, and I am paraphrasing here because I haven't got the direct quote, but The Undertaker basically turned around and said that it's too much of a pretty boy mentality going on in the locker room, and most of them just sit around and play video games. And when he was in the locker room, he basically carried weapons on him and handled business that way. And to name but a few, Xavier Woods has come out and called him out on it, and Shayna Baszler has as well, which I think is quite interesting because somebody with her caliber, she can handle herself. I think the quote from Baszler was something along the lines of, I carry weapons and I play video games too, which obviously is shade pointed his way. And then you've got Xavier Woods basically saying, look, you know, I'm thankful to those that told me to, you know, look after myself, save money, etc., and I learnt the business through them, and I'm glad that I settle things via video games rather than with weapons or whatever. So
I read that as well, and I thought that was like a really good kind of thing. It's like, because I think again this is that kind of change of lifestyle where back in the day, you know, everybody was after everybody's spot, and so everybody like essentially sounded like they hated each other backstage.
Yeah.
When things got in the ring, it was professional and everybody done what they done, but backstage everybody was hot dogging each other. Well, I don't think he should be pushed because I've done this and I've done that and yada yada. But now these days, like everybody could just come together and be friends, play video games, and everybody is probably much more friendly with that way.
Yeah. I've got to be honest with you. Having lived out of a suitcase for roughly 8 years, in the sense of I would be in one place most of my time, but then I would travel back home, if you like, for a few days and then go back. It is incredibly lonely when it's just you and you go back to potentially an empty place, or you go back to a place where you don't necessarily get on with everyone. And that's me trying to put myself in sort of the shoes of a main roster wrestler, to be honest. You know, I mean, obviously times are different now given the current world circumstances, but I just I think it's archaic. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it's archaic, and I'm going to say that, you know, just because people don't carry weapons does not mean to say that they can't take care of business correctly. And I think that this is the start of him saying that, and I've said this on Facebook. I said it to Jason, fellow Brood member. I don't think The Undertaker is used to having people call him out on his statements, given how influential, how respectful how respected he was backstage. And now he's coming out with this, and talent like Xavier Woods and Shayna Baszler have turned around and said, well, I don't do that and I do this, and, you know, doesn't mean to say that I handle my stuff incorrectly or anything like that. I
But
don't
the
know.
business has also completely changed.
Yeah.
And I think he still might be thinking of a bit more of an old school mentality when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean,
I was away when you started talking about that, but also like the fact that he essentially had a crew of people, the Bond Street crew.
yeah.
He has that like tattooed on his
Yeah.
stomach. So
that
he essentially gathered a bunch of people that were all like, right, we're in this together, we'll protect each other. If anything ever happens, we'll be there for you, and that kind of thing.
I think that
To kind
was
of counteract the clique.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was formed of Savio Vega,
Godfather.
the Godfather, Rikishi, I think, is in there.
I think one of the Godwins as well.
Yeah,
maybe both the Godwins.
Possibly, but the one that sticks out is Midian.
Midian, yeah.
I mean, it's a product of the time, to be honest with you. And of course,
because the 90s was much more cutthroat in the wrestling business than it is today.
Yeah, but also as well, you've got to think about your place of work. Yeah, you say hi to everyone, but when you actually think about it, how many of them would you go for a pint with? Would you, you know, if the world was normal, we'd want to interact with them outside of work. And obviously things like that are going to form. It's inevitable. But I think having that way, that mindset is quite dangerous to push for that mindset in this time, in present times. I think it is really dangerous. You see that certain talents aren't being pushed over another one, and you do sort of feel sorry for them. But if then they form together and they have a band of people that politic their way, it's only going to make the atmosphere more toxic and more detrimental to mental health. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm not sitting here saying that, everyone's got to love one another and everything would be cool, but trying to make it as harmonious a workplace as possible is the way to go, as opposed to being like, oh, well, I ride with them, so don't fuck with me kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Like, you don't hear about any kind of gangs these days, so...
Yeah. But I think the more that the mask of kayfabe slips in terms of The Undertaker, the more I'm sort of like, all right, I don't want to know this. Make it stop.
Yeah.
Please make it stop. It's one of them,
We weren't meant to know this much about the behind the scenes.
Well, there's a line, isn't there? Like, there's stories that we've shared before about things like The Undertaker getting burnt and, his coat being burnt and stuff like that. And then there's bits into his family life, which I think is actually quite sweet. And you see the side that, and then you see this side and you're like, you're verging on a dick here. And I don't like saying that, especially about somebody like The Undertaker. That could just be me, but because he is respected, and you could argue he's one of the last true wrestling properties out there, in the sense of he kept kayfabe for so long, and when he broke it randomly on an episode of Raw, and people started calling him Mark and stuff, and that lasted for probably 2 weeks, and it was forgotten. If the network wasn't a thing and YouTube wasn't a thing and we weren't able to go back and look at it, people would have genuinely forgot about that. So yeah,
There's kind of other things like that, as you say, with the way that sometimes on Raw, like the one promo I'll bring up is when CM Punk was talking to Triple H. It's like, oh, this isn't CM Punk talking to Triple H. This is Phil Brooks talking to Paul Levesque. And it's like, oh, that's their real names.
Yeah. I mean, but then the thing is, though, like, how far do you take that breaking of kayfabe? So I read somewhere that the plan is, now that Selena Vega has gone, the plan is to have Charlotte and her fiance Andre Almas, be a thing on TV. And for me, and I've been very vocal about this before, when it was Becky and Seth, I don't want that.
No.
I don't want that breaking of kayfabe, if you like, if it is.
I don't care who's doing who.
Yeah.
If it makes sense, like it did maybe when Maria and Mike Bennett were in WWE, because they made it work. But if you're just going to force two people like Charlotte and Andrade together that have absolutely nothing in common other than their boinking, like, that means nothing to me. I don't care.
So, like, the example that I was going to use was either Karrion Kross and his wife, or the Garganos.
They work very well.
Yeah. But on the flip side of that, it would be like Keith Lee and Mia Yim. Now, I know that they started teasing that with NXT a couple of years ago, but I just thought to myself, they're only put together because they're off-screen boinking. Like, what the fuck is the point? Like, why didn't they have another legitimate couple? So, like, I think it's Montez Ford and
what's her
Bianca
face?
Belair.
EST.
Yeah, Bianca Belair.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, would it work? Probably fucking not. Why? Because their characters don't gel together.
No. Well, that one I've maybe said they actually would gel together, but I mean, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I mean, it
but,
depends on how it's presented, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Like when she was brought into the main roster, it made sense because a whole bunch of people were like beating down her husband, so she made the save and she attacked Zelina Vega at the time.
Yeah.
But like also that's the thing now of saying that.
Yeah.
That means that she's not joined the Street Profits and she's not like
No.
she doesn't come out with them. She's doing her own thing.
Yeah.
So
and I think that's what it needs to be. It can be.
Yeah.
You can have that nudge, nudge, wink, wink. So
Mhm.
Montez Ford, I don't know whether it's a tattoo or not, but he's got lips here. I think it's a tattoo, but also on his ring attire. When he walks the ring with a jacket, he's got lips on his neck.
Uh-huh.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, EST, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas I don't want to say forcing, but in terms of TV, forcing Charlotte and Andre together.
I can give you the biggest one of these was when they brought up that Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins were together.
Yeah.
For literally no reason. They were both WWE and Raw Women's Champions at the time, and then all of a sudden Corbin and Lacey Evans were in feuds with them, and then they just piled them together. It's like, and then Becky's like, well, it's no surprise. Like everybody knows that we're together, and then it's like, okay, right. Well, like, why does that mean that you have to be a thing on TV? Like, you can just do your own thing.
But even going back to that, it was always, are they, aren't they? And I can't remember where he said it, but Seth Rollins said something along the lines of, I will let the fans decide and let them believe what they want to believe. If they think we're good friends, fine. If they think that we're together, I don't care. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, because of everything that's progressed since then, in terms of Becky having the baby and whatever, congratulations, by the way. You have had to recognise, but it was like when Stephanie McMahon was pregnant with her first baby. There was an announcement on WWE.com. That was it. That was the only time that pregnancy was announced. It wasn't discussed by commentary. It wasn't discussed by Triple H online. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it should be. If the characters together don't gel, or there's that continuity of that history being together, don't force it.
Exactly, because then there could also be the awkward thing of what if it doesn't work out and then they break up, and then you've had this kind of gimmick online of the two of them being together, and now you're like, well, we need to break that up, or we need to kind of, for story reasons, keep them together.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not exactly in wrestling per se, but it does involve wrestlers. Robbie E and Brooke Adams, or Miss Tessmacher, as you may know her from Impact, they went on The Amazing Race together when they were a couple.
Right.
But that was recorded months ago, and then since the recording of that, the two of them broke up, and they had to continue to pretend that they were together every week that aired on television. So the second that they were eliminated from The Amazing Race, spoilers, they didn't win that season, Brooke was like, yeah, we've not been together for months, but we had to continue pretending because Amazing Race told us to pretend that we were still together.
God, I'm not even going there. So, bringing it back then to the 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
Very quickly, how does the product improve from here?
One of the easiest things would be to just bring back blading. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But sometimes, see if you really want to make a feud feel special. And even if it is just the last match, where, and also kind of things like, oh, if you're in a blood feud, would you start a match with a collar and elbow tie up? No, you wouldn't. You would want to blast that guy in the face the first second that you have.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw Hard to Kill recently, the Impact Wrestling pay-per-view, which I'm partially, I'm about halfway through listening to Chucky T and Jolly covering. Nice. So if you're not listening to that, go back and listen to that. It's on our feed. But Sami Callihan and Eddie Edwards have had a blood feud that's lasted 2, maybe 3 years at this point.
Right.
Sami Callihan went and done this thing where he went to swing a baseball bat, and I think on top of a steel chair, and it was meant to hit Eddie in the face, but instead he completely missed and just smashed Eddie in the face.
Yeah.
But they had a match at Hard to Kill. It was Barbed Wire Massacre. The two of them didn't come up and go, oh, right, well, collar and elbow tie up. They kind of went at each other, and then they tried the collar and elbow tie up to kind of be ooh, pushy shove. But the two of them weren't this is that kind of thing. It's if I hate you and I want to end you, I'm not going to be oh, let's wrestle. No, let's fight. There's complete difference with that.
Yeah. I mean, blading's one way to do it, but now there's such advancements, especially in the current situation that we're in terms of audiences not being present physically and, obviously tapings and stuff. There's other ways that you could get a blood injury going. Mm-hmm. So use that to the advantage is what I would say. If people aren't happy to do it, there are other ways around it.
Exactly.
I mean, listen, I'll be honest with you, if it can happen in fucking rugby union, then it can certainly happen in WWE.
No, not even actual blading, I suppose. You could gimmick it. Just
that's what I mean. So
smash a blood pack over your face, boom, blood everywhere. Ah.
Yeah, or you can get the blood capsules.
Yeah.
Special effects makeup now is fucking quality, especially with the budget that WWE could potentially have.
Yeah.
It would be nothing to rig something potentially in a hairline or anything like that where it's not as noticeable. Bang, there you go, kind of thing. But yeah.
It's just when you think of some people like Shawn Michaels or Triple H or Eddie Guerrero, just blood streaming down their face, and then you're just so much more invested in a match when you're watching wrestlers like that. It's oh my god, they're getting so weak, they're losing so much blood, yada yada, that kind of thing.
For me, the one that stands out is Ric Flair.
Oh yeah, Ric Flair as well, of course.
Because obviously with his hair being white, when he bled, I don't know whether he drank, I don't know whether he took fucking aspirin beforehand or whatever, he just seemed to bleed and keep going.
Probably everything in between.
Probably.
Especially Ric Flair.
Yeah. And then the next question to round it off then would be, is the mentality of being able to take care of business with weapons and stuff like that, where do we stand on that?
It made more sense back then, I would probably say.
Yeah.
So, not really going to shit on him for that, because definitely, as I kind of mentioned earlier, back then in the Attitude Era, definitely everything was a lot more cutthroat than it is now. Everybody seems to be a lot more pally. Everything seems to be a lot better. Everybody knows kind of where people came from and yada yada.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's needed now, and it kind of shows because, again, as I kind of say, the fact that you don't hear that there's gangs backstage now, and there's no cliques, and there's no people to oppose them and all that. Everybody seems to be a bit more kind of straight-laced backstage, and everyone seems to be on the same level.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to wrap my head, and I'm just thinking the most recent incident of a disagreement backstage that I can think of, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but one that sticks out to me is AJ Styles and Paul Heyman over the Good Brothers, Gallows and Anderson. For those of you that don't know, when the decision was made to release Gallows and Anderson, long story very short, it was Paul Heyman's idea, and AJ Styles was not particularly happy, wasn't particularly impressed, and said, look, I don't want to work with him. And that's another reason why Paul Heyman is on SmackDown and AJ is on Raw, I think, off the top of my head.
Yeah, because they ended up on the same roster for a little while, which was really weird.
So I don't think it's needed. I think it shows that it's outdated. Listen, I get it. Technology isn't everybody's thing, but for me, that's a more productive use of time compared to what they used to get up to in terms of drinking and taking everything and nothing. And, you know, I'm not saying that The Undertaker did by any stretch of the imagination, but I think playing video games is a more productive way of doing things. And also as well, you can create content that means you get more fan interaction as well. So yeah, there we go.
Stuff like Twitch and all that these days is quite big in wrestlers and stuff.
That's a different issue for a different podcast.
Exactly.
Right, on that note, we have probably made this into more than a swift half. We probably had a swift 2, 3, 5, whatever. So we're going to love you and leave you there. Let us know what you think via our socials. Just search for the Turnbuckle Arms on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Email in your thoughts to theturnbucklearms@gmail.com. And on behalf of me and Griz, stay safe, don't be a dick, and spread kindness, not viruses. Until next time, guys, much love. See you later.
Stay foxy.
Bye.
Bye.
There's a new bar in town. Welcome to the Turnbuckle Arms, where the banter flows like wine and the topics are as fresh as an ice-cold pint. So pull up a chair, grab yourself a glass, and welcome your hosts, The Brew!